Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is May 16th, and we are steadily cruising into the later half of this month. Man, there's been so much going on, but today we have some really important stuff to talk about, and that is the biggest, or at least one of the biggest DeFi products. I'd say like there are three incumbents really, and we have one of them today, and that's Aave, Aave Labs. We have Stani and Emilio who are here to join us to talk about the rollout of Aave 2030, their ambitious plan for the next 3 years, and also the development of Aave V4. But before I get there, I just want to say hello to DeFi Advisor, my esteemed host. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, beautiful day. I'm glad that we're getting towards summer.
Yeah, me too. And honestly, I'm very glad to have Stani and Emilio here from Aave for the first time. Been looking forward to it for a while. And with the whole Aave V4 and 2030 program, I think it's a great opportunity to have them on for the first time. So really thank you guys for coming. Honestly excited.
Yeah, welcome Stani, welcome Emilio.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So we have been just rolling ahead. It was just didn't feel that long ago that you guys came out of the blue and deployed Aave V3. And now we're on the precipice of seeing the development start on Aave V4. So like, what is that? How has that evolving period been of seeing the rollout of V3, seeing the updates that it's provided, and kind of taking that all in and thinking about what you can improve on and deploy out for V4?
It's been a while, right? And it's been
yeah.
Has it been 3 years since the Aave V3?
No, well, we started the development. I mean, the development of V3 started immediately after V2. So after, usually our development plan worked like this. So we developed V1. Immediately after V1, we started the development V2. We developed V2. Immediately after V2, we started the design and development of V3. I'd be honest and say that with V3, I thought like there would be, I think I saw it, I said it on Twitter a few times, that probably there would not have been a new version of Aave, because at that time, I believed V3 had everything that we needed to actually be future-proof long enough to be able to sustain growth for many years to come. Which is true. It's not actually false. I mean, Aave V3 is now like at 11 billion only on Ethereum market size. It's the largest DeFi protocol by TVL if we exclude Eigenlayer and Lido and the restaking, these two restaking services. Which are a bit of a like peculiar category of DeFi. So I do think that V3 it is a very powerful protocol, but at the same time, like there was Go in the last year and a half. They changed a bit, like the priorities for the DAO as well. There was like a huge growth of the DAO itself. So compared to when we released V3, where the DAO was at its beginnings, now we have a very developed and active DAO with a lot of service providers. There is BGD Labs that is doing an amazing job with consolidating the Aave, everything around the Aave ecosystem, and building some innovative tools like Aave, the governance V3. There is ACI doing an amazing job with the merit program and all the cost and business related activities, token logic with the treasury management, and so on and so forth. So in this year and a half, we really had the opportunity to evaluate what was going on in the market, how people was using V3, and what we could actually, and we started noticing that there were some patterns that we actually could leverage to improve upon that. And in March last year, we started working with Stani and the rest of the Aave Labs team on a new improved version of the Aave protocol. and with everything culminated in the proposal that was posted like a week ago on the forum.
Yeah, I just want to bring up your dominance so far. So looking at just pure DeFi apps on Ethereum, you guys are the largest. And I'm taking a look at the DeFi Llama charts as of today. There's $10.83 billion worth of TVL in all Aave products. And that represents about 40% of all lending that is taking place on, is that across all chains or is that just on Ethereum?
Yeah, it's across all chains, but the vast majority is on Ethereum. Yeah.
Wow, and that's pretty incredible because we've seen a huge growth of other lending providers, right? Like when you guys launched Aave V1 and V2, there's pretty much you, Compound, and I guess you could call Maker as well too. But now we've seen a bunch of other entrants like Silo and Curve as well too, who are also trying to roll out their own products. And so it's a testament to Aave itself that you guys have been able to retain so much market share, even in the face of growing competition.
Yeah, maybe one thing to also highlight is that the competition and for the liquidity will always exist. So I think one of the key cornerstones of our development and vision in Aave Labs is that we believe that there should be a constant rate of innovation, and there is always more efficient ways to construct lending and borrowing and different types of DeFi protocols. So effectively, what actually the more recent Aave 2030 and V4 proposal aims to do is continue that innovation curve. And that innovation results then pretty much into obviously more market share because users are going to use the technology that is the best out there, but also reducing different kinds of cost associated or even simplifying the existing infrastructure to make it more simple. So it can be, we can innovate in the future as a DAO on the individual components in a modular structure much more easier and much more faster. But it really showcases that we are very excited that there are a lot of newcomers in this space and trying to figure out and innovate at the same time. And these innovations are really complementary. And we also, the way we think about innovation is that no one really owns ideas in DeFi, and every single idea and innovation compounds from that. And that's why we're excited that we see a lot of choices. And DeFi in general for us is about that choices, that you can actually choose which protocols, even interfaces in the existing, in the same protocol as a user you want to use, for example. And that just becomes better financial infrastructure for everyone in DeFi and later for mainstream.
So before we hop into talking about 2030 and V4, I just wanted to talk about market structure because you guys are sitting at that $10 billion TVL mark, and it's still quite a ways below the kind of all-time highs for the amount of TVL that you guys captured, which was back in October of 2021 when you guys peaked at about $19 billion. Since then, we've had a bunch of negative external events from Aave that kind of crushed lending for a while. We had the UST depeg, we had the Steth depeg, FTX collapsing as well too. So
just one thing about those, Sam, is some of these events necessarily weren't like the negative from Aave, but in overall of the climate of DeFi and crypto in general. And one comment I want to say about the FTX was an interesting example because at that point, centralized exchanges were growing significantly, especially with FTX. And something we noticed after FTX is that a lot of users were starting to look for options that were non-custodial ways to exchange liquidity, non-custodial way to unlock capital with liquidity, and we saw a little bit of rise on that. But in general, we think that the growth and the TVLs are very much dictated on the whole, like a DeFi and the crypto space growth. Just wanted to mention that there.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you on that. I think that if you look back at DeFi during that time period, the protocols that had, or at least that didn't have exposure and were able to remain working through then, essentially didn't see any loss of funds. I mean, as long as your positions, if you had ETH lending positions open or BTC positions open on chain, you probably weren't losing any money, right? It was only people in centralized places that were losing money, like FTX or BlockFi or the host of other lending products at the time that were rehypothecating and opening their users up to an incredible amount of risk through other people who were borrowing their assets. So, I think it's been a good look for DeFi as a whole, especially the lending markets. And as Aave moves closer to its fifth year of operation from V1, we were talking a little bit about this before, but that you guys had ETHLend and everything running. But with 5 years now, there's, Aave really has set itself apart as the premier place to for institutions and also retail to come in and use as a lending facility. So I think that really sets you guys up for the next iteration, which is going to be through your 2030 plan, which is a ambitious 3-year plan that you guys have set out. There's a nice forum post that covers both V4 and Aave 2030, which we'll have in the show notes here that you can go take a look at. But it looks like the next 3 years are set up to really grow Aave tenfold from where it is now, based on what I've read about V4, and also a bunch of other cool stuff like the introduction of cross-chain liquidity layer, your RWA product, and also the focus on Go to grow that into being a multi-billion-dollar asset.
Yeah, I mean, the idea behind the proposal and behind not only V4 but all the other innovations that in reality they are just software. Like I was talking with Stani about this. Like the proposal, it's really only about software. It's not necessarily about strategy. It only proposes to build some piece of software for the Aave ecosystem that at the moment don't exist. Mm-hmm. It's the new Aave V4. It's some new facilitators for Go that we already have some ideas about them. It's expanding Aave to non-EVM networks that at the moment they are gaining a lot of traction, thinking of Solana, thinking of Ton network, thinking of Aptos. There are many networks that are gaining some traction with completely different technology stack. And there is also like the idea behind the Aave network that, in my opinion, should bring a bit everything together. But all of them are really software. So the interesting thing is that because of this software, then what's going to happen is that the Aave DAO will necessarily need to start expanding markets and use cases compared to the market and use case that we have today, which, in my opinion, is the way to truly grow past the use case that the Aave protocol is well renowned today, which is basically cryptocurrency leveraging. Essentially, that's the main use case against the Aave protocol used with. So the interesting thing is that I do see this fitting really well with the DAO narrative, because creating more use cases makes open opportunities for service providers that are very active to actually start covering other aspects of the use case that are past software, because software is only part of the equation. There is a lot of work. For example, when Go was released, the DAO picked up on the bits dev and growth side, and it's doing an amazing job with the liquidity committee. It managed to repeg Go, it managed to grow the liquidity. Go is growing. It's almost 60 million TVL, and so on and so forth. So we really hope that this is the effect that we will see, that this software that we'll actually build will bring the community even further together and we can work all together to expand Aave to this use case and to move past what we have today, while still maintaining the focus. I mean, it's not like we want to become something different. Is we want to consolidate what we have and grow even further. That's the idea.
Yeah. So Emilio, you actually said, I think a little earlier, that when Aave V3 came out, that you thought it was a final product, that you thought that this was...
I had this strong belief that it was not the case in the end. Yeah.
So what changed? Like what came out that kind of shifted your vision on that?
Well, I think like in the last year and a half, I would say, the Aave protocol had there were many situations which kind of emerged some possibilities for improvement. And I can think, for example, of the famous CRV short from Aave Eisenberg, which ultimately didn't result in like in 2 million loss. Like there was a lot of noise, and it seemed like the world was crumbling, falling apart. In reality, nothing happened. Basically, there was a small insolvency, was covered a week later, and the protocol was still fine. Which, in my opinion, was a pretty strong testament of the protocol, because it was a very interesting situation. I mean, the protocol was never in that situation where an asset was leveraged to the point where it could actually have brought the secondary market to collapse in terms of available liquidity. And yet the protocol sustained it very reliably. And there was the CRV position. For some reason, CRV is always at the center of the attention here. There was this huge CRV position that at some point was, some people were concerned about a risk of liquidation, and again, a risk of insolvency. Again, in the end, nothing happened. I can recall a few events where we noticed some patterns and some margins of improvement. And when we started thinking about it, more ideas actually came out, and ultimately ended up like with the V4 proposal. So with V4, there are a lot of improvements in terms of capital efficiency, in terms of risk management, in terms of we also know that there's a lot of governance work at the moment, because the Aave V3 is deployed across 13 networks. And there are like hundreds of assets listed on the Aave protocol across all the networks. So we necessarily have to automate this kind of stuff. Otherwise, like managing them with the governance becomes really, really complicated and a lot of work. So yeah, that was basically the main driver behind like the design of Aave V4. I mean, a proposal like the 2030 proposal doesn't come up in 2 weeks. Like, we have been working with Stani, with the rest of the team on this since March of last year. There has been a lot of research work to actually identify features that make sense. There has been a lot of prototyping, so to actually understand if those features that make sense are actually doable as well, because not everything is doable on chain. So it's not something that comes up in a week or so. It's something that requires a lot of preemptive work, and the preemptive work is what you are seeing now, basically. Don't know if Stani wants to add something.
Big thing there. Everything that Emilio said is really really up to the point about the new version. And I think what's really fascinating is that with the new version 4, one of the ideas is to figure out the pricing of the liquidity. So currently, like, one of the amazing design choices of the Aave protocol is that as a user, you can come into one market and utilize your whole portfolio, and then manage your liquidity the way you want, to borrow assets the way you want. And that's very seamless. user experience, and that's why these concentrated markets are significantly having the widest market share and are able to capture the widest user base compared to individual siloed models. And when you have this kind of wide range of market, one of the important things is that you want to optimize the cost and not just the risk and reward, but also like the cost of the liquidity. So from the perspective that if you supply a asset like a stablecoin, you expect to earn based on what is the risk brought into the protocol per position. And what the version 4 does pretty well with the liquidity premium feature is that it takes the existing model of the and design of the this kind of like a concentrated Aave market and makes it the best place to borrow with a lean position, meaning that if you are driving the least amount of risk into the protocol, an example will be if you only supply ETH and borrow USDC, you're gonna pay the base rate of the borrowing costs. But if you're other side of the spectrum, the accepted risk spectrum based on the DAO's risk management, and you provide more risk, as Emilio's example with the CRV, then that risk is priced accordingly. And more importantly, it also means that the risk premiums can be adjusted dynamically based on dynamic changes in the market. So if an asset becomes more riskier, that can be priced into the protocol, and effectively the suppliers can earn more on the liquidity they are providing. And that way the market can grow based on this optimization of borrowing cost and earnings accordingly.
Yeah, so I read through the proposals, and I thought the most interesting thing was the unified liquidity layer that was discussed with V4. And so I remember back, gosh, it must have been at least 3 to 4 years now, Compound came out and wrote this big white paper about how they wanted to have Compound Chain, which essentially would become this unified liquidity layer. They would move all of their collateral deposits into it, and then it could be kind of moved out into different networks based on usage. That never came about. I don't know what, Compound kind of faded off and is doing their own other stuff now. But it looks like in this new V4 that you guys are actually making that a reality, right? So there's going to be a unified liquidity layer that brings all those collateral into one place and allows for cross-chain lending and borrowing without having to, segregate all these different positions across different networks. And is also going to come out with Aave Chain sometime in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean the liquidity layer is actually at a much lower level of abstraction, in the sense that what we noticed in the when we started thinking about how to design V4 is that essentially one part that never changed between or with very limited changes between V1, between V3, is the part that manages the liquidity, right? So if you take V1 and you compare the part where liquidity is managed, so accounting for user positions, deposits, accounting for accumulation of the interest, accounting for interest rate calculations, and so on and so forth, that barely changed between the 3 versions. Plus, we had a feature in Aave V3 that's called portals, which initially in our idea would have been used to, when we developed it. When we developed the V3, we were really thinking about layer 2s and other networks as really the next home for the vast majority of crypto users, right? It took way longer time than I was thinking compared to, I mean, the Ethereum main network is still the largest network by TVL by far compared to all the other networks. But DL2s are actually starting, and other networks as well are actually starting to take a lot of traction compared to the last 6 months or 1 year. We have seen Arbitrum adoption, base adoption. Avalanche is coming up with their own modular blockchain infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So I do believe that something like portals would be way more fitting now than when we introduced it like 2 years ago. And the thing is that when we start looking at the V4 architecture and we start thinking about how to use Aave portals, basically it started to become clear to us that actually not only we should think about like islands, the different protocols instance that are on independent individual networks, but within the protocol itself, we could actually take out the part that manages the liquidity, which is the liquidity layer, and then build the borrowing module on top. And the borrowing module actually draws liquidity from the liquidity layer in a very similar fashion as a module built on top of portals would do with V3. It's just that in V3, the implementation is slightly different. It would not be suitable, but you could do it already with Aave V3 with portals, right? So it really is a generalization of this mechanism that we introduced with V3 with portals to basically segregate completely the liquidity from the way the liquidity is used. So the borrowing module will be one module that will draw liquidity from the liquidity layer, and there might be a variety of borrow modules. So one borrow module that uses the standard Aave method of over-collateralized position, another module that uses CDP style position like Maker, another module that takes the liquidity. If we have multiple instances of liquidity layers, for example, then you can interconnect these two liquidity layers to basically move part of the liquidity from one liquidity layer to another. If you want to initialize another custom market for different use cases. So that really is a generalization of a concept that we already had in V3, and it will come really handy with the network, because the Aave chain that we have in mind is going to be way different than what Compound, for example, had in mind back in the days, because it will be a general purpose network, and where the features of the current features of Aave and Aave V4 would be integrated at a very low level of abstraction. So I'm thinking, for example, that it would be nice to have Go as gas currency, because like having a stablecoin as gas currency makes UX so much easier for people that is not used to crypto, right? I'm thinking about having the liquidity layer actually embedded at the network level, so that if people want to interact and all the protocols can plug their liquidity into the liquidity layer seamlessly and almost for free, no additional computational cost, so that we would achieve something similar to what other networks are doing today. Thinking, for example, some networks are planning to use SDAI as a way for people that bridge to that network to earn interest. But similar, but way more integrated and way more seamless for developers to build on top compared to this kind of implementation. So that's the big picture around V4 liquidity layer and eventually the Aave chain that comes next.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes sense. I mean, this is kind of I don't want to say it's like a shared idea, but a lot of other builders are kind of getting to this same place of saying, oh, hey, we have all these, we have an app that exists already, and we have all these collateral assets. Building a unified layer and then also launching an L2 in your guys' case really gives us a bunch more flexibility in being able to shift assets around. And it really gives us better control and more fees that we can collect from running that, you know, here we have, instead of being fully dependent on just ETH or the other networks that we're going towards, now we can deploy our own infrastructure that acts as the hub that connects all these different other networks into one place, so that we can service both Ethereum and then all the other L2s and then all the other EVM chains or non-EVM chains that you guys are looking at as well too, potentially Bitcoin in the future. I'm sure is maybe on the roadmap as well too, depending on how they build out their tech stack over the next few years. So I think it's really important that, if you launch Aave chain and goes there, like all those fees are paid in Go. I mean, that could be a huge amount of revenue generation added back in for the Aave protocol by providing this one unified source. And so I think it's the kind of in result of building an app, right? You build an app and then you kind of see that, oh, hey, we need more specialization. Let's launch our own network so that we can fully customize every part of our protocol existing app already, so that we can service our users in the best way.
Yeah, and it leaves also a lot of design space of optimizing the network for decentralized finance. And if you think about Ethereum EVM itself, it's pretty much optimized to be a general purpose computer on the blockchain. So basically, obviously, the first step is to launch Aave Network as a main liquidity hub, and with the CCLL being able to do that cross-chain liquidity movements. But down the line, it enables this unique opportunity to actually tweak the Aave network to be actually very optimized an environment for decentralized finance. And besides the Go network fees, what it allows to do also is to open up Validium chains onto the Aave network and settling there, which essentially means that it's possible to create interesting payments use cases and payments infrastructure with Go that could scale to the mainstream usage, and settling those transactions into the Aave network. And that's really fascinating because our vision is obviously to build everything open source, and Aave as a software itself in an ecosystem is something that we see is going to be part of the future of financial infrastructure, same as a lot of these internet-based protocols. So we have to always think about that mainstream scale and mainstream use cases down the line as DeFi starts to get more mature, more acceptable, and getting more interest from the mainstream and institutions. And that's where Aave Network can be very beneficial.
As different protocols like evolve into chains, I think there's always like a certain risk with can you really attract the users to come with you when you move to this kind of a network structure rather than like, for example, being on Ethereum where most liquidity is? Like, how do you guys see that situation? Like, how can you actually make sure that you draw in enough of the capital already involved?
That's a good question. I mean, it's a bit like I think like releasing in a new network from a technical perspective, at least like in the standard form. For example, if you want to release an L2 today, you have like 20 different packages, and you can deploy a new Arbitrum network or Optimism from Optimism chain or any other ZK, like really within 5 minutes. It doesn't really take that much effort. There's a different scenario if you want to start customizing it a bit, like I mentioned, with different gas token, like some different features at the network level and so on and so forth. So I would say that the tech part is not even the most complicated part of the equation. Growing it, like you mentioned, it is certainly more difficult. And to me, it's very similar to a stablecoin. So when you release a stablecoin at the beginning, you basically build the tech, you release the stablecoin, people start borrowing it. But then if you don't do business and then you don't do growth and you don't help the growth of the stablecoin, accordingly, the stablecoin will not grow. People will lose interest. Users will not hold it. It will lose the peg, and ultimately will die. Which at the beginning, for example, the DAO was not doing the best job in working around Go, and it was suffering a little bit from a peg perspective. But then, like, we brought back a lot of work. A lot of guys in the DAO have been doing an amazing job. Now Go is at peg, growing strong, adoptions in different protocols every day, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's going to be fundamental. We do have a lot of activity already that we can move to a network. So we do have a baseline of activity that I'm pretty sure will already contribute to bringing some activity to the network. But I also recognize that protocols like Aave are not the most, I would say, I mean, users don't use usually Aave every day like they would use a DEX. Like, there is much more chance that a DEX is used multiple times a day compared to a protocol like Aave, where opening a position, managing that position is probably much less recurrent interaction, or claiming interest or claiming rewards, whatever. It doesn't usually happen multiple times a day. It happens maybe once a month. So it's not the most highest user activity, user interaction protocol out there, but it does bring quite a lot of activity. Like, there are, I think, don't remember, Stani, do you remember how many users we have on Polygon, for example? I think 60K users or something like that per month.
Oh, it's quite a lot. I think it's even more, and that just showcases that
and also,
when the network fees are lower, there's more users.
Yeah, and also like, one important use case, in my opinion, that will come almost naturally from using Go as gas token is micropayments, because then you can start using Go as a way to forward payments within the network natively and almost instantaneously, and with very cheap fees. So we do have a strong baseline to bring to the network that should set a baseline of activity, in my opinion. But I agree that to be truly competitive, like, you cannot move forward without other protocols joining your network, other users joining your network. So it's really the same thing, like use cases, collaborations. We collaborate with a lot of protocols out there. We collaborate with Balancer. Chainlink is a long-term partner. We collaborate with Aura, Curve, lot of collaborations for Go with Gearbox. And I'm pretty sure that we can leverage this collaboration and create new to actually also boost the Aave network when that will be reality.
And just want to mention that basically, obviously, we're a technical contributor. So what we usually, the way we think about it is that we build software from the Aave Labs, but the DAO itself has, as Emilio mentioned, done a lot of these interesting efforts to actually maintain the ecosystem, and a lot of effort goes to what ACI Mark has been doing in Token Logic and many of other DAO contributors there. So when Emilio is referring to we, it's basically the DAO and kind of like the wider ecosystem. And I do think that the power of Aave is that there is a functional DAO, and it's working towards the same goal, and that's basically the idea of 2030, that it's not really changing the direction of the Aave DAO. It's basically giving a North Star of future innovation, and it's more forward-looking from that perspective. But it is an interesting question in overall.
So you guys mentioned Go several times, and Go is, I think, one of your flagship products. It's sitting at about $50 million TVL right now, but it looks like, from what I've read in the 2030 plan and the V4 plan, that Go is going to take a very prominent place inside of Aave in the future. I know you mentioned it potentially as the gas token, but it looks like Go is going to have increased usage, and then also responsibility in becoming an important integrative part of Aave. So how do you see Go scaling over the next few years?
Well, when we designed the release Go, the idea behind Go is actually is to be very flexible. So like the main thing that we were thinking about is, it was pretty clear that releasing only a CDP or over collateralized, purely collateralized stablecoin with no other alternatives would be quite hard to scale. We have been seeing this many times in the industry already. So the idea behind Go was like, why do we need to commit to a certain way of generating the stablecoin when there might be a variety of them? So the idea behind Go is that the current way of generating Go is one of the possible many using the Aave protocol, but part of the proposal of Aave 2030 is actually progressing the work that was set at the beginning with Go, which is basically creating some additional facilitators for Go that might create some new sources of demand for it in a way that it would be possible essentially to scale the availability of Go on the market even further. So for example, I do see very likely that at some point the DAO will introduce a facilitator that works in a similar fashion as Ethena, for example, because that would make a lot of sense from a perspective of risk balancing. We have seen that the Ethena design scales really well when in situations of bull market. So when the market starts is an uptrend, and it kind of eats on it in itself when the market is on a downtrend. The design of Go is so that you can basically balance the different parts that compose like the total supply of Go. So one part is going to be backed by delta neutral strategies, and another part is going to be backed by over collateralized position. You can balance the two to actually manage risk further, rather than having the stablecoin based on one mechanism or another, so that you can basically leverage one or the other whenever you want to favor growth, or you want to favor risk, or you want to balance the two situations. So I do see that as a possibility moving forward for Go to grow through a variety of different generation mechanisms. We call them facilitators in Go. RWA facilitators is clearly another option there, like a bit like Maker is doing, where part of DAI is backed by real world assets. So I think that's going to be a strong driver for the growth of Go in the years to come. Yeah. I don't know if Stani wants to add anything. Hello?
No, that was really good. No, that was really, I think Emilio explained quite well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to Go. I mean, it's been a good initial growth phase and testing to see how different interest rate structures have affected it. Thankfully, you guys have worked really hard to get the peg back over these past few months. And I know that it took a lot of effort from the actual Aave DAO to come in and help with that. I think that Go really provides an opportunity for the Aave to, again, it's owning more of the vertical stack inside of Aave, right? Go acting as this debt token that can capture fees, and also be used to pay it out. I know that you guys mentioned in the Aave V4 proposal that potentially you could have interest paid out on Go instead of the asset that you are receiving, another different stablecoin. So it's really cool to see the use cases that you guys are building and thinking about the future with Go.
Yeah, I mean, that feature alone, in my opinion, is going to be worth V4, because Aave at the moment generates like around, I think, like last numbers, but now might be different because the market went down a bit. The interest rates also went down. So last time I checked, it was generating around 350 million of interest in stable coins only per year. And if we imagine that only even if half of the users decide to receive the interest in Go instead, that's 175 million or even more, depending on the interest that is generated in Go per year. And like basically it's new Go that is introduced in the market at peg, because backed directly by another stable coin in a mechanism that does not exist at the moment on the market. So with a novel generation mechanism. And those assets, those 175 million that are collected that back the Go, can actually be reinvested for the DAO to generate yield. Same way as Maker does, for example. Or it can be either like externally or even internally directly within the Aave protocol. So I do believe that feature alone for the DAO is worth, makes a V4 worth it, because it's gonna boost the usage of Go and like the growth of Go a lot in a safe way without putting pressure on the peg. So it's gonna be pretty cool.
Yeah. So I think taking a look at V4, some of the coolest things that you guys are adding are, we talked about the unified liquidity layer. Another cool thing that I think that you guys are adding is this like fuzzy controlled interest rate. So I think you guys have mentioned it a little bit in reference to the curve situation that took place. But overall, getting anything passed through governance is a long and arduous and multi-step process. I've seen how many.
That's very diplomatic explanation of the DAO process, but yeah.
There's like 15 steps that it has to go through. You know, you got to,
Yeah.
it's like temperature checks, and then God knows what else. So thinking about the minutia of Aave and adjusting all the different levers that you guys have at your disposal, I guess work requirements for DAO voters to individually analyze and then make decisions on these extremely important but also time-consuming and individualized processes is not really great for the long term, because again, like DAO governance is it's kind of a mess, but it's great as well too in how it performs. So being able to automate a lot of the individual operational parameters for Aave, specifically like through these fuzzy controlled interest rates, where you can have dynamic changes that take place at the borrowing curve to adjust both the kink and then also the rates as well too, really gives a lot more flexibility for Aave to maximize its amount lent, and then also the borrowing that you are able to facilitate.
You want to take it, Stani? Should I at the beginning?
I think the fuzzy interest rates is, Emilio, that's your expertise. And
yeah,
can you share a little bit of the story? How did you come up with the background?
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea is mostly, first of all, like the idea came from because we were trying to build, Aave Labs was trying to build an interest rate automated borrow rate model for Go, which we are still building. I think it's getting better, in better shape. So the idea came from the fact at the beginning, with Aave Labs, we tried a PID mechanism, which is at the moment, it's probably it's the form of control mechanism that is most widely used within DeFi. There is RAI, which has a PID controller. I think Euler one was based on something similar. Morpho ones is something very similar, a bit more advanced. It's dynamic PID, is dynamic PD controller. But what we noticed with this kind of approach is that those are very reactive, in the sense that they are only based on one parameter. In the case of RAI, for example, or in the case of a stablecoin like Go, you can only base on the error. So the distance from the error, the historical, the distance from the error, the derivative of the historical, or the derivative of the distance from the error, and so on and so forth. And you cannot keep, like, in reality, like the interest rates and the peg of a stablecoin are the result of a variety of interactions, market movements, users' behavior. I don't know, new product that requires Go is launched, then Go demand suddenly spikes up, and so on and so forth. So what happens in those cases is that if you are only looking at the error, then you are waiting for the market to act basically on your asset or on your reserve, in the case of Aave, to rebalance the rates, right? So this is what's happening. But with a system like fuzzy rates, you can define a set of rules that are kind of, another thing, let's say this also. Another thing that we notice is that deciding the interest, this is especially true for Go, deciding the interest rates for Go, for example, it can be translated with a very simplified set of human like reasoning rules. So usually there is Go stewards, we call it Go steward in the DAO, that decide the interest rates to avoid having voting every time. So we basically set up a committee that decides how to change the interest rates of Go within certain range. So they cannot change it massively, but they have the ability to change the interest rate in a way that it can be more active and not to have to go through governance every time. It would be massive work. So what I have noticed, for example, that many times, like the decision whether or not raise the interest rates comes up to the reasoning: how is demand? Is demand growing? Yes or no? How is the state of the peg? Is the asset up peg? Is the asset below peg? Is it going? Is it trending above peg a lot? Is trending downward in the peg a lot? How is the state of the secondary market? Is the asset liquid on the secondary market? How has been like the variation on the secondary market in the last few days, and so on and so forth. All of these can be translated in a set of rules that are that fit very well human-like reasoning, right? And that's exactly where fuzzy logic comes in, because fuzzy logic is an approach widely used in control theory when you have to control systems that have a lot of input variables that are, and those systems are hard to control with a formal mathematical approach. So controlling them, trying to find an equation that fit it all is really complicated, impossible, really complicated, or very computational intensive. You can basically achieve the same approach using this control mechanism that is called fuzzy logic. So you basically define a set of rules and you define degrees of truth rather than having a Boolean logic 0 or 1. You define degrees of truth. So, for example, in the case of a stablecoin, you can define: is the asset very close to peg? Is the asset not so close to peg? Is the asset far from peg? Is the asset very far from peg? So you can define 95 cents very far, 97 cents far, 98 cents close, 99.8 very close, right? And by having this set of possibilities, you can evaluate them against the rules that you define and come up with a value. I'm very simplifying the mechanism a lot. It's not that simple, but just to give an idea that you can basically translate human-like reasoning in a way that allows you to react to input values and adjust an output value accordingly. So that's the idea. And that hopefully, the interesting thing is that we can scale it indefinitely with as many rules as we want, with, of course, considering gas constraints or computational constraints where those are actual constraints. So, for example, on L1. And therefore, we can use a wide set of data to actually have interest rate modules that are more preemptive, so that can act preemptively and therefore can optimize capital efficiency for both the lenders and the borrowers. That's the idea. Of course, we are going to build them. We are going to test them. This is novel concept, never been applied on blockchain before. So we are going to build them. We are going to test them. We are going to adjust them accordingly depending on the behavior.
Apologize, was muted. I wanted to ask guys, I remember very early on when I heard of Aave. By the way, when I heard about Aave for the first time, I was like a complete crypto noob. It was still called Land. It was exactly the days It was exactly the days of the switch, pretty much. The project was already referred to as Aave, but the token was still called Land. And it was the first time that I heard that there's actually such a thing as like lending and borrowing in crypto. And I was like, oh my God, I was stunned, like I was amazed. And I think that shortly after it, I also heard that you guys had like something like an electronic financial license in the UK or something like that, and I heard that you had like that you were actually a lawyer or had background on that front. And as I kept following you guys, I mean, I always had a feeling that you guys are very much institutional aligned in a way, like that you really see the opportunity of onboarding the huge amounts of capital that can actually enter the space, just like we, for example, are seeing with the ETFs now a bit. We've seen the first few months of the year. And I'm I also, by the way, Stani, I remember hearing you in one of the interviews that I heard, at least that's how I remember, that you talked about like maybe allowing like both a permissionless but also a non-permissionless like permission DeFi for specific actors who don't want to like have their funds mixed with other funds who are not. And I'm very curious about like your general strategy about that side of things, and whether there are any like interesting developments that we should expect.
Yeah, and no, it's a really interesting questions, and the way we see it is that we always build, for the people and for the masses. So the way we think about the Aave protocol and kind of like our understanding of the Aave DAO is that this financial infrastructure could be something that is used and applicable to every single person in the planet could get empowerment. It creates like a fair and accessible environment, and not just Aave protocol, but all the groundbreaking innovations in DeFi, from AMMs to stablecoins and so forth. And the way we also see it is that a big part of this equation is also institutions. But institutions, people need to have the same access, obviously, as institutions, and institutions have their own benefit of being able to aggregate liquidity. And we do think that DeFi will move slowly, so it probably will take a decade to get more adoption, because finance in general moves slowly. And the reason for that is that this technology and these liquidity markets, they need to mature over time and prove themselves as a mature software, functional, reliable. And I think that is happening already, been happening over the years and keeps happening over the upcoming years. And for DeFi, I think it's been amazing that we've seen few of the bigger banks getting already involved and excited about not just ETFs and also tokenization, but actually testing out the Aave infrastructure on a public blockchain, like what we've seen with the Project Guardian, with JPM, actually in this in this project where they deployed a permission version of Aave on a permissionless network as a step forward towards using the DeFi technology on a public blockchain. So I think that the institutional work will definitely continue, and there's a lot of participants that are interested in working and trying out DeFi. And I do think it's going to be a long game, but there's the right ingredients in the Aave ecosystem to participate, experiment, and also asset tokenization is going to be a big part of not just the Aave protocol, but also the Go stablecoin. And Emilio, probably you have more ideas on the RWAs. I think you are equally bullish on institutional adoption.
I mean, I think that we need to move the space forward. We cannot stay in this circular referencing market where the market grows because the crypto market grows, and therefore the lending market grows, and therefore the crypto market. I mean, it
doesn't work, because when the market goes down 80%,
yes,
it's highly volatile for the fees that you collect as a company.
It's also like not the real game, like the real game is onboarding the actual capital of the world.
Exactly. So I do think that sacrifices will need to be made because whenever you start interacting with the real world, you need to necessarily start making sacrifice in terms of decentralization. But I do think it's fine. Like not everything needs to be 100% fully decentralized. Not everything can be 100% fully decentralized. It's just a matter, because also decentralization is one of the benefits, for sure the major benefit of blockchain, but also seamless interaction and transparency are a huge factor in blockchain as well. And I do think that at some point we will need to really sit down and start thinking how to bring all the assets in the world on chain. I mean, that's the end game. Okay, I didn't want to use end game, but I did. That was just a joke, nothing more. I have no problem with the end game word, but yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what we should aim for at the end of the day, because that's where we actually start moving forward from what the crypto world is today and make it actually completely functional for the real world. Yeah.
So I had one last question before we get out of here, and you guys don't have to answer this, but Emilio, you were telling me before we did the show that you guys had native Bitcoin lending support way back in the day for ETHLend. And I know you guys deprecated it because it just didn't work with how the Aave system works. But just to touch on what DeFi Advisor was saying before, the institutions have come this year. We have Bitcoin ETFs. We have a resurgence in demand for Bitcoin. And so is there going to be a point in the future where Aave is natively interacting with Bitcoin again?
I mean, from a technical perspective, with V4 we could probably do it, because with V4 we are going to introduce a feature that is called vaults, where you can isolate your collateral from the pools. So your collateral is not supplied in the Aave pools like it happens today, but you keep them this is alpha. No, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, it's more of course, like a system like this, like it's a decision that involves the whole DAO. So building something that would move away this much from Ethereum, integrating a native currency natively, it does include some level of centralization that you need to consider. For example, back in the days with Itland, there was kind of a validator in the middle that was validating Bitcoin balances to be able to borrow on Ethereum. So there were a few of these validators running. You had to trust the validator. So there was a layer in the middle that was essentially allowing Bitcoin to Ethereum communication. I'm not sure. I thought, I will be honest, I thought in the past years that like we would have seen much more adoption of Bitcoin on the Ethereum blockchain. I was a few years ago, like 2021, I was convinced that wrapped BTC would have been the largest wrapped currency on Ethereum and the largest protocol, if you will, by far, largest than Lido, largest than everything. I was wrong, because that didn't happen. So it's pretty clear to me that Bitcoin users don't really want, for now at least, interact with DeFi, or maybe they just don't have the right tools. I don't know. This is something that needs to be explored, I think.
Yeah, if you look at the WBTC supply, it's only about it's like less than 1% of the total supply of Bitcoin. So when we're talking about like capture of that market into the Ethereum ecosystem, it's lagging behind. And so like, is the future going to be these wrapped assets on Ethereum, or will there be other avenues that can be explored?
You mean on the Aave network, right?
Well, I was just looking at the total WBTC. Yeah, on the Aave network. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Stani,
it's kind of interesting. I do think that there's a lot of value that these assets can move across networks, and that's where the Aave infrastructure, where liquidity should be a setting where it can earn most of it, at least. And I think Aave as a protocol is perfect place to store liquidity, and then moving liquidity across different networks. In that natural sense, it could happen between one Aave pool to another Aave pool on another network. That being said, I think over time these wrap assets probably will move across everywhere. So obviously on Bitcoin ecosystem, L2s are becoming also a popular concept. I think there is at this moment more Bitcoin L2s than Ethereum L2s. But something that's going to be interesting is obviously now moving assets happens through bridging, but at some point there's going to be a light switch where most of the bridging happens and moving assets between with ZK proofs actually. So what you can do, you can quickly verify a proof and move your asset to another network. And then it really depends on what is the use case of that asset. So whether it's a network token that is kind of like a gas, or it has some other type of a value. But I do think these assets will go where the users are in sufficient security, at least from like my kind of a perspective.
Or it might just be tokenized Bitcoin ETFs coming onto Ethereum and making their way into Aave at some point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is interesting. But on the other hand, that will be basically tokenizing the more of like an institutional value into on-chain and leveraging that. But I do see the value of that as well, because something that is really incredible about DeFi, it's a big programmable financial infrastructure. So decentralized finance isn't really like about financial services. You know, it's about having a infrastructure that is transparent enough, immutable enough, or having governance and and all this and non-custodial access. So it's basically a model where anyone can actually participate and create programmable applications that anyone can build financial services on top. So I do think being able to tokenize those kinds of real world off-chain assets will be beneficial, because that adds the programmability as well, and market access in a very most transparent way as possible, as we know that in DeFi you can quantify risks end to end. You can see all that transparency on a every block basis, which is enormously going to reduce friction, but also different kinds of indirect transaction costs. So I could see a future like that.
Yeah, I mean the Bitcoin market cap is $1 trillion, but it's still small comparatively to all the other different RWA assets that could come on. If you just think about that, Aave could capture, I don't know, 1% of the total bond market in the entire world. I mean that, or a couple of percent. I mean that in itself would be huge, and maybe we'll get there someday. So really excited to see how this 3-year action plan plays out for Aave 2030. It's very ambitious, and it sets the groundwork for what you at Aave Labs are going to be bringing to market in a technological sense over these next couple of years. So pretty incredible to see the growth of Aave and its ability to dynamically shift to changing market conditions, both in the crypto space and then also in the wider TradFi space as well too.
Man, this is I think Aave is positioned to be one of I don't know, in a decade or so, it can be one of the biggest organizations in the world. Like you know, the DeFi protocols that will actually work and that will actually like achieve like GOAT statuses, they're gonna be some of the biggest businesses around. Like, we're not joking, we're in the business of finance. Businesses who succeed tends to actually grow and also have an actual effect on people's life. And honestly, it's something spectacular to even watch, you know.
And I do think that I mean, I would see them as kind of like some sort of governing bodies that are governing financial infrastructure that benefits all people or institutions. And the same way as we're using today IP protocol, the protocols behind email, all these internet protocols, but actually are governed in a decentralized way. So why not govern also financial infrastructure, the most transparent and open way where everyone can contribute and basically live in the future they build the future they want to live in. So yeah, we're super excited as well.
Well, very cool. For everybody that's listening, you can find links to the 2 governance forums that we were referencing today, which is the Aave V4 rollout, and then also the Aave 2030 in the show notes. Additionally, you can come find us at Leviathan_.news, both on Twitter and Telegram. And Emilio, Stani, great having you here today. Loved hearing about what you guys have in store in the future and what you're planning to build.
And you've also earned some squid points. Respect.
Oh, nice.
Now you're really gonna make it. Now you're really gonna.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, guys. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot. I love the
Thank you
chat.
so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. And we will see everybody tomorrow. We got a
No, man, we will see them today, hopefully, because we have the weekly panel. And I'm actually hoping Millie's coming and maybe even Austin's coming. So if you're available, come as well, man. Like, I think it's going to be fun. We have so much to talk about with the SEC stuff and whatever. By the way, guys, Stani, Emilio, if you're available and want to come to the weekly panel after, feel free. But I guess you guys have like actual stuff to do.
Yeah, we have to build stuff, but otherwise, thank you for that.
I have another 3 hours of call until 8.
Yeah. Well, good luck, everybody, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
folks.